Good morning. Good morning. I am David Throop. I am not the minister. I am a lay leader who sometimes gives sermons and worship services, and including this morning. Our regular minister is Reverend Katie McCade Lucas. She will be back next week. This is a blessed week off for her, and I'm stepping in. Light our chalice. Here's it.
Good morning. I'm Maddie Raymond. I'm your worship associate today. Kathy Charles will light our chalice. This flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is an everlasting flame for this community, and it offers warmth to those who need it from cold. It provides light to those who would see. It purifies and transforms this sanctuary into a sacred space, and this congregation into sacred community. May its flame burn within us, true, high, and strong. Our opening song this morning is number 113. It's in your gray hymnal. It's entitled, "Where is Our Holy Church?" We gather this morning in this sacred space, kindling a fire that burns here in our chalice and hopefully in our hearts. We gather to engage in a different kind of worship, one that does not include traditional sermons, but it is holy nonetheless. We gather to honor our covenant and engage in congregational life, doing the necessary work to ensure that this community thrives. We gather together as a people of faith, but our guiding principle is love, a love that binds us in covenant. Please, will you join me in affirming our covenant? Love is the doctrine of this church. Truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with one another. Thank you.
We will do a responsive reading this morning. Will you turn to reading 635 in the gray hymnal, A New Heart by Chaim Stern. Who can say, I have purified my heart and I am free from sin? Cast away all the evil you have done and get yourselves a new heart and a new spirit. A new heart will I give you, a new spirit live within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of faith. For this says the eternal God, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out. I will put my spirit within you and teach you to live by my laws. And now Brad James will give us music. Brad?
A few months ago, Lily and I were sitting around thinking about what songs we'd like to do together and maybe what songs should be done here at the church. And she said to me, you know what you should do is What a Wonderful World. And as much as I like to do whatever Lillian says to do, because it's a good idea, I thought, well, number one, I'm not Louis Armstrong. And besides, you know, as time went on, it was kind of like, well, is it the right time, you know, given what's going on for the song? Turns out, this song was written in 1967 by a couple of experienced songwriters who wanted to put out into the world something that would bring a spot of joy in the midst of troubled times. It was 1967. We had lost our president to an assassination. We had Vietnam going on. We had riots and protests and all these things going on. And they wanted to bring something to that. So maybe this is the right time. They wrote it specifically for Louis Armstrong because they sort of saw him as like an ambassador for joy to the world. And so may it bring an oasis of joy to you in the midst of these troubled times, even though I am no Louis Armstrong. I see trees that are green, red roses too. I'll watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I hear my grandbabies cry, and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also in the faces of the people passing by. I see friends lighting candles, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I see trees that are green and red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also in the faces of the people passing by. I see friends giving hugs, saying, how do you do? But they're really saying, I love you. I see trees that are green, and red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Miller, and I am the Director of Religious Education here at Bay Area Unitarian Universalist Church. And my pronouns are she, her. Our story for all ages this morning is entitled Muddy Children. It's from a story by Janine Grossmeyer. Over 200 years ago, in New Hampshire, there lived a small boy named Hosea BAUUC. Hosea was always asking questions about what and why and how. Hosea liked to play hide and seek with his 9 older brothers and sisters, word games inside when it was rainy, and tag outside when it was sunny. In the winter, he liked to jump into snowdrifts. In the summer, he liked to jump into the creek. And in the fall, he liked to jump into leaf piles. In the spring, Hosea liked to jump into mud. Hosea loved mud. When it was soft and squishy, and when it was thick and sticky, Hosea would create glorious mud puddles. He liked to poke sticks in and see how deep the mud was. He liked to make mud pies and to build mud dams. He liked to jump in puddles hard with both feet and make the muddy water splash really high. And he loved to step in puddles very slowly so that the mud oozed up between his toes. Yes, Hosea loved mud. Not everybody in his house liked mud quite as much. His mother had died when he was not quite 2, so his older sisters took care of him. His sister, who scrubbed the family's dirty clothes in big wash tubs, didn't like having to scrub all that mud off of Hosea's clothes. His other older sister, who kept the little children clean, didn't like having to scrub all that mud off of Hosea. and Hosea didn't like baths. He had to stand in a wash tub in front of the fire and have water dumped over his head. But his sisters loved him. So they took him home, and they washed him, and they dried him, and they made him clean. And then they asked their father, "Please tell Hosea to stop playing in the mud." "Hosea," said his father very sternly, "you should not play in the mud." "Why?" asked Hosea, because he loved asking questions. "Because," said his father, who was a Baptist preacher, "just as we try to live a good life, to be kind to other people, and to follow God's plan, we try to stay clean." "Yes, Father," Hosea said, and after that he tried. But it wasn't easy. Sometimes the mud was just there. He walked through the mud to gather the eggs or feed the pigs, and sometimes when he was already muddy from doing his chores, he played in the mud just a little bit. His sisters, who loved him, took him home, washed him, dried him, and made him all clean. And then they asked their father again, "Please tell Hosea to stop playing in the mud." "Yes, Father," Hosea said. He was sad because he had truly tried not to get muddy most of the time. "Are you very angry with me, Father?" "I'm disappointed in you, Hosea, and I am a little angry with you." Hosea dared to look up just a little to ask, "Do you still love me?" His father didn't sound stern anymore. "I will always love you, Hosea, no matter what you do. Even if I get muddy again? Yes. Even if I get really, really muddy? Yes. Even if I get mud all the way up to my eyebrows?" Even then, his father smiled. And then he added, "But remember, you must try to stay clean." "I'll remember and I'll try," Hosea promised. And he did, most of the time anyway. And as he grew up, he stopped liking mud so much, but he still liked to ask questions about how and why and what. "Father," Hosea asked when he was a teenager, "why does our church believe that God will let only 1 in 1,000 people into heaven, even when many of those other people lead good lives?" His father didn't have an answer. "Father," Hosea asked, "if I had the power to create a living creature, and if I knew that the creature was going to have a miserable life, that they would suffer and die and go to hell and be miserable forever, and I went ahead and created it anyway, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? And would I be good or bad?" His father didn't have an answer for that either. Hosea had to find his own answers. He read the Bible. He went to some Universalist churches. And at 19, Hosea decided that he believed in universal salvation, which is the idea that everyone, everywhere, will be saved from hell. Hosea BAUUC believed God would eventually let everyone into heaven, good and bad. His father asked, "How can you believe that God would let bad people into heaven?" "Because, Father, I remember what you told me when I was small. I believe that even if God is disappointed with people or a little angry with them, God will always love them and want them to be happy, no matter what they do and no matter how muddy they are." In the words of Hosea BAUUC, "Your child has fallen into the mire, and its body and its garments are defiled. You cleanse it and array it in clean robes. And the question is, do you love your child because you washed it? Or did you wash it because you loved it?" I grew up in a Christian fundamentalist home where the threat of hellfire and damnation, of never being good enough, was a very real thing. And I've always wondered, said Hosea, how my life would have been different if I had grown up knowing that I was saved from the beginning. Our keeper of the flame today is Dax Stanton.
It is now time for our candles of community. We invite you to come forward and light a candle if you have something on your heart, a joy, a concern, a sorrow, a loss, a celebration, a puzzle. If you wish to have a candle brought to you at where you sit, please raise your hand and we'll run one to you. But please come forward and share your joys and your concerns. light one final candle for joy and concerns unexpressed, still in your hearts but not spoken. Silent candle for the concerns of the people. This is from the poet Joseph Fasano, A Sudden Hymn in Winter. What if, after years of trial, a love should come and lay a hand upon you and say, this late, your life is not a crime. Your life is not a crime. A little background on how this morning's sermon came together and how I came to be standing in front of you. I preach from time to time. I last preached from this pulpit in early February. Reverend Katie McQuaid-Lucas had asked me to preach, and I did, and some of you liked it anyway. So I thought that went well enough. I should start paying attention to my life and seeing if another sermon was suggesting itself. And when I was preaching about inclusion back in February, I told you the story of how I came into the lunch ministry. And I'll say more about lunch ministry. But when I was performing my lunch ministerial duties, having lunch after church, a member of this congregation pointed out to me that he'd been part of a discussion here where there was a split over the application of the inherent worth and dignity of all people. So some of the people in the discussion said that President Trump has inherent worth and dignity, and other people said he does not. And we had a discussion about that over lunch. And then I was reminded of this poem, of this Sudden Hymn in Winter poem from Joseph Fasano, and I liked that, and that seemed to speak to me about the inherent worth and dignity of all people and of me, myself. And then I spoke with a woman. I remembered speaking with a woman who was remembering things that she had done that she was deeply ashamed of, and she felt like she shouldn't be ashamed of them, and yet so she was sort of ashamed of being ashamed of them, but she didn't want to share them with her therapist because they were too shameful, although she was going to the therapist because she wanted to talk about the things that were heavy on her heart, but not this one. And I thought this is sort of coming together on a theme of forgiveness and self-forgiveness, and maybe there's a sermon there. So then I got in my email, I got the Universe, which is the email that monthly email that we send out, setting out what's going to be happening in our church, this congregation, for the month. And I noticed that Reverend McQuaid-Lucas had listed the Sunday morning programs, except the third one, the 16th today, was just listed as TBA. And I thought, well, that's curious. And so I wrote her an email, and I said, I appreciated you letting me preach, and I might have another one coming along, and I'd like to talk to you when it might get on the calendar. And I noticed that you've got, like 3 weeks from now, you've got a TBA on the calendar, and if that's a hold, then I could preach then or some other time if you wanted me. Well, when I next saw her, she said, you know, I had somebody lined up for the 16th. I had it all plugged. I couldn't be here. I had it covered. And then just as we were putting the Universe out, I get word that they had to cancel for a family emergency. And I was like, where am I ever going to get anybody who's going to be willing to preach on 2 weeks' notice? And then I got your email. So it was obvious. So that's how I get to be here this morning. So the last time I preached in front of you, I told you about my call to the lunch ministry, how I had established Sunday lunches in New Orleans and Austin and San Jose, California, and Huntsville, Alabama, UU churches, and that when I had come here to this church, the president of the congregation had stood up and said, we need somebody to organize lunch, because we had one and it's fallen apart. And I was like, I am called to this ministry. Well, 30 years later, I'm still organizing Sunday lunches, and it's a ministry in that people bring their concerns to lunch, like whether or not Donald Trump has inherent worth and dignity. And I've been going to lunches with UUs for nigh on 40 years now. And when I first started going to UU churches, it was early in the Carter administration, and over lunch people were debating whether Nixon and Kissinger still had inherent worth and dignity. And then later I heard the doubt that UUs have about whether Reagan had inherent worth and dignity. And then I heard each of the Bush presidencies, it was debated whether or not they had inherent worth and dignity. And with as Republicans come and go in the presidency, and here we are today. So that's what the lunch ministry was teaching me, and the inherent worth and dignity question comes up not just for Republican presidents, but for other people who seem perverse and harmful and dangerous. And I heard just last night, I heard the claim that some people have forfeited their inherent worth and dignity. But if, in my understanding, if it really is inherent, you can't forfeit it. It's not up to you. You can voluntarily degrade yourself, but you can't give up that last bit of inherent worth and dignity. It inheres in the human heart and the human soul, and you don't have the power to forfeit it. But we're not a creedal church, and although the belief in the inherent worth of dignity is a pillar of UU teaching, it's not a creed, and you're free to dissent from it or to say that it doesn't apply in this particular case. And we're not going to kick you out, and we're not going to disfellowship you, because we're not a creedal church. When I was living in New Orleans, it was Halloween, and I was going to a Halloween party, and I had I'd gotten some clown makeup and made my face white, titanium oxide white, and was wearing a bowler hat and was on my way to the party. And I was stopping at a small convenience store to pick up some things to take to the party so I didn't show up empty-handed. And as I was walking in, a man walked out, a guy my age, walked out of it, took one look at me and sucker punched me, right? Punched me in the face, knocked me to the ground, and I screamed at the top of my lungs because I didn't know what else to do. And he kind of shrugged and walked away. Why should I say that he has inherent worth and dignity? I really know next to nothing about him. The only thing I really know about him is that he took a dislike to me and punched me in the face. Why should I claim inherent worth and dignity from him? How do I even know that? I certainly didn't have any particular evidence that he had inherent worth and dignity, and he didn't do much for my sense of dignity either, actually. Inherent worth and dignity are constructs. They are not metaphysical things that you can prove or disprove. They are things that we agree on or we disagree on. It's not like there's some fluid in the person, then I can check somebody's fluid level and I can say that this guy's inherent worth and dignity fluid levels are down and need another quart. Even the guy that punched me. But I believe in the inherent worth and dignity as a commitment that I make. As a UU, I am committed to seeing the inherent worth and dignity in each person. And I believe that I'll find that there is inherent worth to find in that person, even if they've degraded themselves, even if they have betrayed themselves. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the scientist and dissident, wrote, If only there were evil people somehow insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were only necessary to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? During the life of any heart, this line keeps changing place. Sometimes it is squeezed one way by exuberant evil, and sometimes it shifts to allow enough space for the good to flourish. One and the same human being, at various ages, under various circumstances, a totally different human being. At times, he is close to being a devil, at times to sainthood. But his name doesn't change, and to that name we ascribe the whole lot, good and evil. He later said, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, not between classes, not between political parties either, but right through every human heart, through all human hearts. The line shifts inside us. It oscillates with the years. And even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. Let me repeat that last line. Even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And thus I believe, and thus I count on, even in you, even if you are muddy up to your eyebrows, a bridge of good, bridgehead of good still remains. And I'm remembering the woman friend that I knew who believed that her sins, her bad actions, had placed her beyond the pale. She felt unworthy, no inherent worth, but I told her as a UU that I have committed myself to seeing her inherent worth, and I have committed myself to seeing your inherent worth and dignity. I am committed to seeing that even when you are muddy up to your eyebrows, even when you're too ashamed to tell your psychologist, even when you're too ashamed to tell yourself. Sister Helen Prigine is a Catholic nun and an anti-death penalty activist. She famously stated that people are more than the worst thing they have ever done. People are more than the worst thing that they have ever done. And I come to this congregation, and I chose this congregation because it teaches me that no matter how badly I stumble or fall or sin, there is no hell. There is no hell, and I'm not going there, and you're not going there. Because my sins are forgivable and redeemable. And my sins do not wipe out that bridgehead of goodness that is still in my heart, even on my worst day. As I was preparing this sermon, I'd already fleshed it out quite a bit, and I came to services 2 weeks ago. And Katie illustrated her point with a poem. And I listened to the poem, and I thought, darn, that was the one I was going to use. But I thought about it, and I said, I think this just means that this congregation really needs to hear this poem. So I'm going to tell it to you again. Rumi wrote 700 years ago, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. Even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come to this congregation, come among these people where we teach that you're not going to hell and you are forgivable and you are redeemable, whoever you are. Come, yet again come. But I know that you know that and you think you're the exception. I know that you believe because you're here. You signal that you believe. That you are not damned. You are not damned to hell. And yet there's part of your heart that is still telling you that your life is a crime, that you're a shameful thing. And no matter how convinced you are, and no matter how many times you write our 7 principles over and over with a fountain pen and sign it nicely that you believe that, I know that that doubt about yourself still lives there. And that's the real problem with denying that anyone has inherent worth and dignity. Because, Kissinger and Nixon and Ford and Reagan and the Bushes and Trump, they don't care whether I think they have inherent worth or dignity. It doesn't really matter in the larger world of things what my opinion or your opinion of their behavior or their state of grace is. It doesn't matter. But what it does matter is that if you open the door to believing that people have forfeited their inherent worth and dignity, that opens the possibility that you forfeited your worth and dignity when you got muddy up to your eyebrows. You can believe that if you can believe that about anybody, you sure can believe it about yourself. And what I know, talking with some of you during lunch ministry, is that belief still perniciously comes up. Now, some of us argue that it's good. It's good to stay angry. It's good to stay condemnatory. It's good to stay on the warpath because we live in troubled times, and anger can be useful. Anger can spur us to action, to activism, to effective action. And staying angry at people who have forfeited their inherent worth and dignity can fire up that anger. And conversely, seeing people as inherently worthy and inherently dignified can sap some of that anger, and maybe it won't be available when you need it. Sometimes you need to be angry. Well, I think there's a fine point about forgiveness here. Forgiveness is a word that gets kicked around and different people use it in different ways, but when I talk about forgiveness this morning, forgiveness does not mean absolving people of their sins. Loving the boy that fell into the mud doesn't clean him up, doesn't clean his clothes, doesn't mean that he's obeyed. You can be disappointed. Forgiveness does not mean absolving. There's a concept in Christian circles of cheap grace. When somebody has offended and harmed other people, that have come back and said, but I've confessed my salvation, and the community rallies around that person and restores them to their former place of honor in the congregation or in the community without asking for deep work and deep amends, that's cheap grace. And it does neither the sinner any good, nor, for that matter, the people that have been harmed by his actions. Forgiving people does not mean handing out handing out cheap grace. It means refusing to hold hatred and anger in our hearts. We can still demand of people that they straighten up and fly right. Hosea BAUUC's father could still demand that he quit playing in the mud. Even though he knew that Hosea would fail occasionally, we can still make demands of people for good action. And the same goes for you. The same goes for you. Don't give yourself cheap grace. If your heart is still telling you that you are not worthy, that you have no inherent worth and dignity, if that message is coming out, it may mean that although you have inherent worth and dignity, you've covered it up with the mud. And it's time for you to do some serious washing and laundry and a good bath. Because as long as your heart is telling you that there's something off about your inherent worth and dignity, it's time to clean up. It's time to clean up. You shouldn't accept unacceptable acts. You shouldn't hand out cheap grace, not for other people and really not for yourself. Because your inherent worth and dignity is sacred and you need to keep it clean. But if you have trouble letting go of it, ask yourself, think about your worst behavior, your nastiest unforgiven sin, the biggest patch of mud that you've got on your face. What if a friend came to you and confided that he had done the same thing? Could you find it in your heart to forgive him? If he was sorry? If he apologized? If he was ashamed? If he was crying, could you forgive him? But what if his apology was flawed and he didn't really take responsibilities for his actions and he was still mostly blaming other people for his behavior? Could you forgive him? Could you let go of your disgust and anger and judgment and revulsion? And if you saw what a weak and broken, pitiful specimen of a man he was and had become, and how full of shame and self-loathing and self-deception, could you forgive him anyway? I ask you because I just might be that man. I just might need your forgiveness. And you might be that man or woman. And you might need that forgiveness too. Same with you. Your misdeeds don't negate your worthiness. But if you have a mess to clean up, then clean it up. In UU, we do not have a sacrament of penance. No sacrament of confession. But I was doing my lunch ministry research last week, and a member of this congregation told me over lunch that if we did have a sacrament of penance and confession, it would certainly involve coffee. Don't give yourself cheap grace. Do apologies. Do amends. Do inner work. Do acts of penance. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Please tell the truth about yourself. Turn to this community for support. You chose this community which affirms your worth and dignity, your inherent worth and dignity. You chose this community which denies hell. Turn to these folks when you believe that you have forfeited your own worth and dignity. If that resonates in your heart, if that's a belief that you carry, turn to these people, the people that are in these seats this morning. There is no hell, and you are not going, even when you have broken your vow 1,000 times. Ours is no caravan of despair, but it is the caravan upholding your inherent worth and dignity. Even when the world denies it, even when you deny it, come to this community when your trust in yourself falters, when you need to do inner work. Come Come work out your own absolution here in these seats with these candles, with these lights, with these flowers. Come here when you have anger and shame which you cannot let go of. Come here to find a purpose in your own life by upholding the inherent worth and dignity in others. Come yet again, come. Thank you.
Now is the time that we, understanding that ours is a democratic congregation and that we alone support all that we do to serve our community as well as our church here. We thank you in advance for your generosity as we collect the offering. Thank you. Will you join me as we bless our offering? This gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world. Now, before we begin our announcements, I'd like to acknowledge the floral arrangement on the altar is from Barbara Derrick's memorial yesterday, and we're appreciative of that. And Jeff, I see you have a sign. Do you have something to say before I do the announcement?
Yeah, if you're going to start
Sure.
the announcements. Rally tomorrow in front of the main gate, and that's for one union led standing up for the civil servants, a number of people in departments that work for NASA or as a contract like my own. Not happy with what's going on there. See me, I'll be in the foyer area here for more information on this tomorrow, 11 a.m. union led. Let's stand up and show our support for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, our announcements are for this Sunday, March 16th, are quite a few, so I'll just jump right in. All of the pledge packets were mailed out on Monday. So if you did pick yours up in person, you should be receiving it in the mail soon. So far, we have only received 37% of the total expected. As of Friday, we've received about 50% of the pledges. So it's pretty important that you get your pledges back to us, because your pledge allows us to estimate what our income will be for the upcoming fiscal year, It allows us to budget, to plan programs and activities. So please, be sure to turn your pledge in as soon as you can. It's important to us. The garage and plant sale is only 2 weeks away. Item drop-off begins Sunday, March 30th, after the congregational meeting, and it will continue from 9 to 5 on Monday and Tuesday. The cutoff for donations is noon on Wednesday, April 2nd. And we'd also like for you to volunteer to prep for the sale. Sign-up sheets are in the foyer. Next to, there's some in Cockrell Hall, but there are also some right in the foyer. Please give what time you can to help us. This is really important. If you can lift and carry, you are especially needed when the storage rooms are unloaded. The garage sale is a fundraiser for the church, as well as a service to our community. A lot of people appreciate the opportunity to come and buy really good things at a really discounted price. So you can come and shop too. I'd like to make one note. On the sign-up sheet out in the foyer, there are 2 forms. Some of them have the correct date of April 3rd through Saturday, April 5th. Some of them have that date as listed April 4th, 5th, and 6th. The correct date is April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So I just wanted to make you mindful of that. Due to a scheduling issue, there was a change in the day trip planned. Instead of going to the Turkish Roadhouse, we will instead be heading to the International Society of Krishna and possible the Villa de Martel convent that is run by the Sisters of Charity. You can find all the details in the order of service insert and the weekly email blast. There are still a few spots left, so you can sign up. You can sign up until this Saturday, March 22nd. You can also sign up using the QR code that's shown on the slide. Now get ready to turn your Wednesday night into an epic showdown of brain power and fun, because Team Trivia Night is back this coming Wednesday, March 19th. Starting at 7 o'clock in Cockrell Hall, teams will be randomly formed starting at 7. To add to the thrill, the winning team will score cool prizes, and best of all, it's totally free, and everyone is welcome. If you're a music buff, come and show off your skills, because we've added another category. Name that song. This Saturday, March 22nd, it will be unthinkable for you to miss our movie at 6 o'clock p.m. in the church sanctuary. Join us for a magical evening filled with adventure, romance, and the timeless charm of The Princess Bride. From sword fights and giant rodents to true love's kiss and the dread pirate Roberts himself, The Princess Bride is the perfect mix of action, humor, and heart. Bring your friends, your family, and a snack. Costumes as you wish, and the possibility of Princess Buttercup bingo. The next meeting of the Clear Lake PFLAG small group is next Sunday, March 23rd at 2 o'clock here in the sanctuary. PFLAG is a pioneering organization dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ individuals and their families. Join us in keeping families united in loving bonds, fostering understanding, and embracing their gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and questioning family members. Now, all of these announcements were just some of the things that are happening in the upcoming week. Be sure to check your weekly email blast for everything that's coming up. And also, we want to remind you about the Houston Music Fest on the 22nd, the Know Your Rights Workshop on the 25th, and the Young Adult Creator Night on the 29th. Yes? Excuse me? Oh, okay. If you're not on the email list, stay connected by subscribing to our mailing list. We send out an email every Tuesday packed with news, events, and updates about our community. You can use the QR code on the screen or visit BAUUC.org to sign up today. You wanted to say something?
I'm glad David talked about worth and dignity today, because I'm going to hit on that a little bit today also. Has everybody seen these red cards? Okay. They're both in Spanish and in English. Why might that be? Why might that be? Anybody? That's right, absolutely. And we're having a workshop. It's a town hall. It's called Know Your Rights. This is something that's happening nationwide. We just decided to do it here at BAUUC. So on the 25th of this month, that's Tuesday at 6:30, we will have a town hall here. And we will have attorneys that will be able to help people if they have any questions about their rights. And this is geared towards immigrants, but this is not just for immigrants. I'm sure you've noticed that what rights you thought you had that might have changed just a little bit here recently. You know, times they are changing. You need to keep up with those times, and you need to know your rights. And that's what's on this card, and that's why it's in Spanish and in English. So if you need a refresher course on what your constitutional rights are, please come to this meeting, 6:30, right here. We'll have attorneys, and like I said, this is for primarily geared towards immigrants, but they will address issues about immigration, your own personal rights, if you should come across any government official, the sheriff's department, the cops, ICE, alcohol, tobacco, and whatever else they regulate. Okay, these rights apply to you also. The attorneys will be here in case someone is undocumented and they are deported. They need to have paperwork for their children. If the children are citizens and they're staying here, those children need to have a guardian, or else they're going to go into foster care, and I know nobody wants that. But there will be attorneys here to help them fill out that paperwork and notarize it here. Same thing for any money, property, anything else that they might have. So please come. There also will be food, a little bit of food. Okay, this isn't going to be, Cinco de Mayo. So, you're not looking for that kind of food. I'm not cooking, okay? I'm not cooking, okay? So please come. Yes, David. Yeah, I know. Thank you. But thank you, 6:30, and I need some volunteers, so see me after the meeting and we'll talk.
Our closing song will be number 298, Wake Now My Senses. Rise as you're willing and able.